Bonk, a Godzilla movie marathon where we're stomping through Godzilla's filmography. I'm Derek, and I've seen all the Godzilla movies.
And I'm Doug, and I've seen 8 Godzilla movies and a Rodan movie.
Yeah, of course we are talking about Toho's first ever in-color kaiju film with, as Doug said, Rodan. Also known as Sword no Daikaiju Rodan, which translates to giant monster of the sky, Rodan. We'll talk about it. Sometimes marketed in America as Rodan, the Flying Monster. This was released in Japan on December 26, 1956. So celebrate Christmas and then jump to the theater and see Rodan.
Hell yeah.
Melt in lava.
Yeah.
This movie, everyone working on this movie, very familiar. Directed by Ishirō Honda. Director of special effects, Eiji Tsubaraya. Story by Ken Kuronuma. Written by Takeshi Kimura and Takeo Murata. Produced by Tomoyuki Tanaka. And scored by Akira Ifukube. 90% of those guys worked on the original Godzilla film, which I think you can tell when you watch this. For sure.
Yeah, it's good people making good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this was both of our first times watching this movie. What are your overall thoughts, Doug?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I don't know how much I have to say about like the story of Rodan, but this movie was like incredibly striking to me. I think for a few reasons. So I feel like I have so many thoughts, but like not a ton of them are oddly enough about necessarily Rodan.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect going into this movie other than I know that it has a following and it is like beloved by a certain population. Like I we'll get into it later, but like this was one that like did have a pretty significant American release and like did really well in theaters the year that it came out. Mm-hmm. So like I know that there are people who were growing up who probably like maybe even saw this movie before they saw Godzilla and have more of an affinity for Rodan as their big kaiju, right? Like their entry into Japanese cinema potentially. So like I knew that like there was some level of like reverence going into this, that it wasn't just going to be a trashy sci-fi movie. But I really didn't know anything else like beyond that. And I could not have predicted like the weird structure of this movie, honestly.
there's an odd structure, but it isn't like entirely unlike at least one movie we've seen before, I feel like. And there were like, because I've never seen this movie and I don't know anything about Rodan, like there were legit twists in this movie that I was like gagged by.
Me too.
I was like, what?
There are 2 of them? There's 2 Rodans?
Okay.
Where did that one come from?
Okay, I'm going to say this right off the bat, because it's not really related to the movie we're watching at all, but like it's fun to watch these movies and like older Japanese stories as a Pokemon fan, because sometimes I'll be watching something and I'm like, oh, that's where that comes from. And seeing this movie and knowing there are 2 Rodans and seeing the way they interact and what they do, I'm like, oh, Latios and Latias are basically Rodans. Like they're both like these weird bird-like dragons that fly at the speed of jets. Like,
holy shit. I never made that connection.
Yeah, well, and I wouldn't have known. I would have had no idea. And like, there's so many different inspirations that go into so many different monsters, but like, undoubtedly, the Rodans inspired those 2 Pokemon as well as other Pokemon too. But it's I don't know. There's always those types of moments, and in addition to the twist of there being 2, that also clicked in my head, and it was just like such a wild moment when they revealed that.
Yeah, it's a big twist. Yeah, I didn't expect that either.
Yeah,
I knew that there were like 2 kaiju in this, or I knew that there were more than 1 kaiju in this movie, but I thought that meant it's like the Megalodon and Rodan. I didn't know that meant literally 2 Rodans. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really glad. I'm obviously really glad that we watched this. It is interesting too, because I think, I'm obviously like the role for me in this podcast is like, I've seen all the Godzilla movies, so I'm steering the ship, but like,
guess what? Not a Godzilla movie.
Yeah. Well, and there's, there's a lot of stuff in the Toho universe, not even in the Godzilla universe, but just like Toho science fiction that, like Honda directed on, or many other writers, or like Tsubaraya worked on, like stuff that is really in that universe, like tied together, like in the meta sense that I really have very little exposure to, that I think can add to the context for like where these movies are and why they are the way that they are. I mean, that's something that like when we originally started doing this, like weren't intending to do like the spin-offs and stuff like that. This was really a Hamish Steele idea that is sort of expounded, but I'm glad about it, because like there's other ones that we're going to do. And I do think that we're still staying relatively limited to the ones that like actually have like monsters in them that appear in the Godzilla universe, which I think helps keep it a little bit, the scope a little bit narrower, so we're not just going
There's
wild.
Still a focus.
Yeah. But all of that said, this movie was so interesting to see, like, this is the one that comes out after Godzilla raids again. And I think you can really feel it, because this is the first movie out of all the Godzilla movies that feels the most like the original Godzilla, but also feels a lot like Godzilla Raids Again, and kind of does stuff that I liked in Raids Again, does it a little bit better, I would argue, in some cases, for like where the perspective is. And I find that really fascinating. Like, so many Godzilla movies, like they so quickly went into a different direction. And like on the other side of it, we've seen the Mothra movie, which is a wildly different kind of movie than this one is. This one does feel like there is such a direct line from the first two Godzilla movies specifically going into this movie. You know what I mean?
Totally. It feels much more like we've brought up oddly, or I've brought up oddly, Halloween several times on this podcast, but because I think there's reason to. Like, you know how like Halloween was meant to be an anthology series first, and then people were like, we love it, and so they just kept making Michael Myers movies. This feels like if Godzilla was never meant to and never did become like a franchise, and it was just an anthology of monster movies, and this was the next one, like the natural progression of like, here's our next monster movie, which is probably exactly what you're saying. But like thinking about it in those sort of terms, I was like, I feel like I get exactly how this movie ended up being what it is.
Yeah, it's almost like you have Godzilla is like the horror movie, Rodan's like kind of the more hard sci-fi movie in a way, and then Mothra is like the fantasy movie, but like all in this sort of same anthology like Toho Kaiju thing that sort of follows similar beats, but are like wildly different at the same time, and like all directed by Honda in this case. Like really cool.
Yeah, it's also interesting that this is it makes sense, but I didn't think about it until you said it. It's also interesting this is their first color monster movie, right? Is what you said?
Yeah.
Also, one thing I had to look up, and I don't know if this came up at all, because I don't know how much of an impact this has on this movie, but one of the things that was so striking about it is like this movie is so visually clean. It is just like I took so many screen grabs because the composition of so many shots is just so clean. And so I was like, first off, I was like, who made this? And I saw that it was Honda, and I was like, that makes sense. But then I was like, who's like, I'm not a film girly. I'm trying to become one, so I don't really know things very well. But I was like, are there other different personnel working on this? And you said mostly it's not. But I checked the cinematographer, and this is like a cinematographer that Ishirō Honda, I think, worked with only once before this, and it wasn't on a monster movie. So now I'm like really curious to go watch that other movie.
Isamu Ashida is his name, right?
Yeah, something about this movie, and I don't know if it's because it's color, I don't know if it's just, the time between movies and picking up techniques or what, but like everything is just like, there's so many shots where I'm like, this is like a painting. Like this, sometimes it's literally a painting, but like even just shots, I'm like, this is like a Renaissance posed painting. Like typically with crowds, the way that crowds are posed and blocked and move, I'm just like, I don't know. There were so many times where I was like drooling over the way that they like shot these like large groups of people. And this is a movie where there are often like a dozen characters moving at once through a shot. In a way that's different than like a crowd running from Godzilla. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, yeah, because I mean, it is different because there's less time spent like in a big city in this movie. Like in a lot of the stuff here takes place in rural areas, and I think that's part of it. But also, I think that like it's wild that this is only 2 years after the first Godzilla because it feels like of a different era. But I really do. I feel like a lot of it is like, on one hand, I think I think Tsubaraya so quickly like mastered the craft of monsters and miniatures, like with the first two Godzilla movies, you know, that like you get into this and then it's just sort of like, yeah, we got this. Like,
well, that's certainly part of it. That's certainly part of it is the miniatures are like so on point in this one.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think the reason I became so curious was because it was all of the people stuff that I was like,
yeah, sure,
so struck by. And like, it's not like this movie is doing anything like revolutionary by like 2024 standards. It probably wasn't doing anything revolutionary necessarily in 1956, but like, it's just so clean. Like the pans are so clean. Like the placing of people is so clean. There are so many times in this movie, and I think this is why I noticed so many times in this movie where I was looking at a shot and I was like, oh, this is shot so perfectly and composed so perfectly. And then it would clean pan to another shot that is like just as perfectly composed. Or like both of these shots, which are all technically part of the same shot, are all organized so clean. Like, oh, it's so, I'll send you, I'm going to see if I can just drop an example right here in the chat for you to look at so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. These two shots, which are just like, these two frames, I should say, because again, it's all the same shot. These two frames, it's just one frame of a bunch of people like looking and pointing into the sky. It's beautiful on its own. And then it pans in such a clean line over to like a couple sitting on a table looking out over the city. It's all one shot and it's so clean and it's so beautiful. God. They're both basically like as if you were taking a photograph. Like, director of photography never made so much sense to me as it does watching this movie. And I don't know if it's because I've watched so many movies this year or if there's just something so, like, perfectly, like, composed about this film in particular. But there were so many moments where I just was like, damn, that was slick. Well, that was so smooth, you know?
Yeah, no, I think probably part of it, you're getting exposed to so many movies that, like, now it's I mean, but that's really, I think, telling that you're watching a lot of like modern movies, like you watch more modern movies in a rapid amount of time than you normally have in the past, and then watching this movie from 1956,
fundamentals, baby, can't fix it in post.
To notice those same the same sort of techniques but done with like a completely different universe of technology. Like, I think it's pretty telling how talented these movie makers were.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because like I'm certainly I don't like I was thinking and I think maybe more of a like amateur naive-ish way, not like in a pretentious way, but I just was like, do they make movies like this anymore? You know what I mean? Like,
you know, you're not, but like that, I think that I know that question kind of annoys people.
But I'm like genuinely curious because of the things I was seeing, you know?
It comes up a lot. That question comes up a lot for a reason though, because it's like, yeah, like we've gotten the surplus of technology. It's never been easier technically to make things than it is now because we can do everything on a computer so easily. Yeah. But what kind of is lost is like some of the reasons that movies look like they did was because you would literally have a cameraman discovering a beautiful location and being inspired by it and being able to like frame it and photograph that exact real life location in a way that they only can see because they're literally standing there right in front of it, you know? Like,
it's just remarkable.
It is. Yeah. Like, and it can be pretentious to people calling it like that, but like, it's also true, and like the proof is in the pudding sometimes, you know.
I mean, maybe it is, but like, why wouldn't you want to look at something this beautiful? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that sounds stupid, but like, there's, I'm not even kidding. I have like probably 100 screenshots just of moments where I was like, whoa, like, I don't know, like something about this one in particular hit me, and I think that's why I'm saying like, there are cool things about Rodan as a monster, and there's cool things about this movie that are different from all the movies we've watched so far. But for some reason, like that's what was striking me. I wonder if how much of it was just sort of like, you know, purely we have this opportunity to film in color, and so like we got to make sure everything looks stunning.
I think there's that. I do think that not taking place just in the middle of Tokyo for the majority of it, I think also probably inspired them a bit. And I think that because there's a lot of good, beautiful, sweeping landscapes in this movie, and I also think that their monsters being a flying monster and like a human-sized bug make it like you're gonna shoot it differently. Like you're not as like this movie is not as focused on the scale as Godzilla is, right? Like
right.
like Rodans are huge and it's scary that they're big, but like you're not seeing Rodans stepping on people. Like the terror of Godzilla was like how incomprehensible. Oh my God, that is a beautiful shot with those mountains. Oh my God.
When you said like not
That's
shooting in the
so
middle
great.
of Tokyo, that's like the first one I thought of was this
Yeah.
shot of like
It's so
a
beautiful.
mountain and like this tiny little human figure just big enough to recognize and see, you know?
Yeah. Oh my God. It's framed so fucking well. No, you're right. The composition is so good. But like, yeah, I think because the terror of the original Godzilla is how can you comprehend something so colossal and unstoppable, pounding through you and destroying everything that you have built up. And in this case, it's less about like, there is plenty of destruction in this movie, but there's a lot less of it compared to your typical Godzilla movie.
For
It's
sure.
a lot more about the human cost. Therefore, the focus is more on the people in the places that they live, and the places they live happen to be beautiful because there are fewer cities. So, you know, not to say that cities aren't also beautiful, but it's a very different, a sweeping view of a mountain is a very different kind of beautiful than a skyline of a city, you know? Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. I'll also call it while we're talking about how this movie looks. I'm assuming, did you just watch it on Max?
I did just watch it on Max.
Yeah. So, one of our frequent, emailers, Robert, who does a lot of like restorations for these movies and stuff. He said that like what's on Max is like the Criterion Collection scan, and it actually like it's like kind of a notoriously like bad scan of it. Like
really?
Yeah. So like technically the movie looks even better. Technically it's like
Holy
a 2008 scan of it. But like he sent me, you know, some restorations he's worked on that use like more recent Blu-ray scans. I think he said there's a recent 4K restoration that hasn't been released yet. So there'll be potentially the best looking this movie has ever looked, potentially to come out in the future. But I'm saying like it already looks beautiful. It looks beautiful. Apparently there's an even more. You sent me the files. I can send them to you if you want to just have your brain melt out of your ears. It seems.
Will.
Yeah. So funny.
Wow.
I'm glad that you brought all of that up. That's really cool.
I just want to paint this movie. I want to paint this movie. That's what I want to do.
It's art.
It is.
So a little bit about how this movie came to be. Again, the timeline is so interesting. You know, Godzilla Raids Again came out in 54 and 55. They were successful. So obviously let's do more monster movies. Tanaka was like, hey, you want to do it? Hey, Honda, let's work on another monster movie. So Honda and Tsubaraya came up with this idea of a giant flying creature based on the Archaeopteryx, I think is how you say it. It's like a bird-like dinosaur.
Mm-hmm. It's a Pokemon based on that too.
Right, there you go. And I mean, you know, and it makes sense. Like Godzilla is like dinosaur-esque.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that you'd have another dinosaur-esque kind of monster if this is going to be kind of your follow-up to Godzilla in a way. So they hire a very popular sci-fi writer and novelist, Ken Kuronuma, who he had been considered to like help them write the original Godzilla. So like I think that's how he was like in their purview. He in addition to, you know, what they were suggesting about like a flying dinosaur, was inspired by this very reported UFO incident in Kentucky in 1948, where a military pilot was killed while supposedly pursuing a flying saucer.
This is wild. I was literally just thinking as you were talking through this about like that juxtaposition of city versus rural. And I was thinking, because this has to do with mining versus, you know, the immediate aftermath of like an atomic bomb. It's all connected, but still I was like thinking what the analogy would be over here. It's like like one movie takes place in New York City. So then where would this one be? And I was like, probably Appalachia, you know, like, and then then you literally said it was inspired by Kentucky. Like, okay,
that's
cool.
Actually such
kind of makes sense.
Comparison. Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. So I mean, he takes that idea, and that's how you kind of get like jet fighters flying after a jet dinosaur basically in this movie. And I think that's what a lot of his treatment that he came up with was like a supersonic flying monster appears over Japan, chased by fighter planes. That's sort of the hook of it. Mm-hmm. It's very different from Godzilla, but still can play with some of the same terror and stuff, right? Of a giant monster, just one that flies instead of walks.
Sure.
It seems just makes perfect sense. Seems kind of galaxy brained if you're trying to follow up Godzilla with something different, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Totally
the one
makes
thing
sense.
Godzilla didn't have, reign over was the sky, right? At this point, so
Right. Exactly. And flash forward a few decades, and then he's
Yeah.
like body jumping into the sky and body slamming people, and
Sure.
it's fine.
Watch out, Rodan.
Right. So from there, two writers were brought on to write the actual screenplay for it. Takeo Murata, he previously co-wrote the script for Godzilla Raids Again and the original Godzilla, so it makes sense that he'd be involved. And then Takeshi Kimura, which is the pen name of Kaoru Mabuchi, but you're going to see him always credited everywhere as Takeshi Kimura. He is brought in as the co-writer for it. This is his first kaiju film that he worked on, but he ends up working on many Toho films going forward. I think we're definitely going to see him again for Godzilla movies as well.
But we haven't talked about him yet.
Not yet. No.
Huh. His name sounds so familiar.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's multiple guys named Takeshi. I think it's why.
No
and actually
way.
multiple guys that have the last name of Kimura. But he was definitely inspired by the 1954 American film Them, which is the movie that features giant ants. That's very famous.
Oh, yeah.
That's how you end up getting the Mega Nulon aspect of this movie. They kind of combine both of those ideas. And I mean, this isn't me speculating, but I wouldn't be surprised if like they maybe had some trouble figuring out how to make Rodan a full scale threat for an entire movie because he's mostly in the skies and it isn't going to be rampaging. You know, you can't just have the whole movie where it's just jets flying after him, right? Like that would be hard to film. And like, how do you integrate a human element to it? So and again, this is me speculating, but I think that's why they sort of come up with this sort of like secondary monster that can also play into the theme and play into the story, but that's more ground level to sort of let this be a full feature, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think it ends up being, I said this is kind of like some movies we've seen before in the sense that like Mothra, the first half of it is the sort of ground element sort of threat of like the little larva,
Right.
Or massive larva rampaging, and then Mothra in the sky, or we've seen, in memory, come on, was it Return of Godzilla with the weird little bugs first that are like
the louse,
yeah, the louse that's like sort of an omen of worse things to come, like so it's still to me, it even though the structure's weird and I wouldn't expect it in a movie now, it feels like it feels like it has a place in this sort of storytelling environment.
Yeah. No, I think that totally makes sense.
I could not help but wonder, and maybe I will get this question answered at some point in our journey, but if part of the speculation as to why it's structured the way it is has to do with how do you make Rodan a theatrical length threat in the sky with the tools that you have at the time, I could not help wonder while I was watching it, like, what would a Rodan movie look like right now where you could basically do anything, and I don't know yet, and maybe the answer's out there and I just don't know it yet, but I could not help but imagine, like, what would that look like,
My first instinct is like a Top Gun kind of movie.
Well, okay, so there was just like I didn't see it, but there was just like this Blue Angels IMAX movie thing that happened as we're recording this, like very recently, and I just have to imagine like you do shit like that, Top Gun, or like that Blue Angels movie where you could just do the wildest airborne shit,
Yeah, people love jets, like jet fighters.
Totally.
Like, I get it. Honestly, I'm sure that like if Tsubaraya had free reign, the dude fucking loves jets. I'm sure he would have been happy to do 2 hours of just a bunch of fucking jets flying around chasing a giant monster.
There's 8 Rodans.
There's, I guess, like 2 directions that I want to go in.
Okay.
One of them for like both are like production things that I think also kind of flow into talking about the plot a little bit. So if it feels like we're getting to another, we can always pause and then revisit this. But
sure.
I think two aspects of it. One is like Honda had this interesting idea based on his biography that I'll plug in the show notes that I plugged for multiple episodes for movies that Honda's directed. Something they talk about in his biography is like he was really interested in this one being like as scientifically accurate as it could be. Like given what it is. Obviously,
Sure.
it's only, they're making up a lot of stuff, but like he wanted there to be, like he says, and I quote, "My intention was to give Rodan a sense of authenticity and credibility, and not to make it a mere fairy tale. I wanted to create something that has ample scientific factual background and support, something that is not false," which I find so interesting.
Because he goes on to make Mothra as his next like big monster, which is basically a fairy tale.
Right. I think it's so funny, but I think then you have like this interesting dichotomy, because if you do compare the two, they're so wildly different movies, despite both having a giant flying kaiju in them, directed by the same guy and featuring many of the same actors and same special effects. Like, they couldn't be more different, really, you know?
Yeah, they feel very different.
And I think that tone thing is the thing. Yeah, he really like veers into fairy tale stuff with Mothra. And this does feel like he's just interested in like genuinely hard science fiction. That's why they spend a lot of time like explaining like these are prehistoric monsters. And they give like multiple reasons for like, are these monsters here because of like global warming? Is it because of hydrogen bomb testing? Is it because we're just digging way too deep with our minds? All of those are kind of like valid theories that also could just could be all of them together, you know, perfect confluence of events. Like he's like, here's plenty of science things that were thrown out at you. There is so much justification for why this could be happening right now. Which, you know, movies, honestly, pretty much every movie after this that we've seen doesn't really care as much about that aspect of it. So it's really interesting that he seemed particularly interested about that in this movie, and you can kind of feel that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the perfect type of mind to keep making movies like this without it getting stale, you know? Like, how do I tell a different kind of monster movie? And it's, this one's a fairy tale, this one's a sci-fi, this one's, you know, really directly about something, this one's more abstractly about, like, he could keep making these forever, I think, and you'd consistently get new, interesting monster movies out of it. Yeah,
I agree. I think the other side of this is like the focus on the mining aspect of it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me. And I think we'll probably dig into a lot of that with plot talk, but I think the real world context is really interesting for this. And this isn't going to come as a surprise, but you know, coal miners are famously underpaid and frequently striking. We know that very well in America, but the same thing was happening in Japan.
Sure.
So like coal was actually like a pretty major force of Japan's post-war economic growth, which we've talked about this sort of economic explosion when we were talking about the Mothra movies, especially Mothra versus Godzilla. Like, you know, a lot of these early kaiju movies were made, you know, like in the wake of World War II, where they're in a bad place and they slowly grow, and then there's an economic boom. One of the sources of that economic boom was coal and coal mining. But of course, like America, coal miners are in very dangerous places, are literally like
terrifying.
The underclass, because they're underground mining fuel for like rich people to use. Just famously always treated badly. Same thing was happening in Japan. So there was a lot of these like real life tensions happening at this very time between labor and management. There, like in 1952, there's famously 282,000 miners in Japan went on strike over wage limits. And then in 1953, there was a protest against layoffs at a local mine that drew 25,000 people. So this stuff was in the news. And so it makes sense where, if, you know, we've already seen in Raids Again, Honda didn't direct that. But at least in the sphere of kaiju stuff, there does seem to be the interest of like, we've talked about scientists, we've talked about military, but like there is a working class element to these stories that we could be telling. So it makes sense that if Honda wants to do his working class kaiju story, miners are like in the news currently, and like almost like the perfect representation of people who are in the working class that are kind of being treated badly, you know, that would take the brunt of an event like this happening.
Yeah, I mean, it is a really interesting group to be your sort of main group and pull your main cast of characters from, because even in that first half of the movie, or even just like the first quarter of the movie, I, not knowing anything about Rodan, was like, how does this all sort of like get to where I know it's supposed to go? Because it could have just been an entirely different movie. It could have been basically a horror movie about,
Mm-hmm.
being sent into the mines and having that be represented by monsters in the mine, which
Truly.
is kind of what it started off as, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that would have been a perfectly compelling, and I would argue just as beautiful movie, because there's just as much cool shit going on before we even know there's a big monster. Like, if you showed this to somebody and didn't tell them it was a kaiju movie, I don't know that they would expect that's where it's going.
No,
I think but it
it's
still would be
wild.
all like everything to the point where you don't know that there's going to be a kaiju would still make sense. Everything still makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with you. I was struck so much watching this movie, but how the whole opening is just, it's all horror movie stuff.
Yes.
Like,
truly.
it's dark. It's
like human horror movie stuff based on like the conditions that they're being sent
Yeah.
into, and then the actual sort of like horror movie monster of it all.
Yeah, like I like this movie, but I wouldn't argue if someone wanted to make the argument that there maybe would have been a better movie if Rodan wasn't part of it and it was just the coal miners and megalunulons and maybe another ground level creature. I could see someone making the argument that maybe it would be a stronger movie with those themes,
I think I would make that argument. And I also like this movie. You know what I mean? Like, I think this movie is very, very good. I think it makes perfect sense from beginning to end with Rodan involved, with both Rodans involved. Like, everything makes sense. But I think I would probably be one of those people that's like, I would love to see the horror movie version of this.
Yeah.
I'd love to see the mining horror movie version of this.
Right.
But you're not going to get that from your kaiju director.
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
So
exactly. It, like,
just
it makes
asking
sense
for a different thing.
It makes sense that it goes in the direction that it does, but Rodan taking to the sky away from the underground immediately radically changes what the movie is.
Right,
right. And suddenly all your main characters are kind of not part of it as much anymore either, which we'll talk about, so there's some interesting things about it, but I think that speaks to the strength of this mining idea, because like there is something uniquely scary about a mine and having to live life as a miner. It's such a dangerous job. And that thematic, like, the idea that like you are in this dangerous job, but also like treated like the literal underclass. Like, there's just so much to that,
And there's so much like potential claustrophobia involved, and the tensions are so, I mean, the movie starts with these two miners getting into a fight, and it's like, you're on top of each other constantly. You know what I mean? So just even that idea of like these close-quartered large crowds having to go through and deal with some sort of threat together. There's like a built-in suspicion. I mean, it starts off with like this whole like, ooh, who did it sort of thing. So like there's so much there. Much there. Just built into the humanity of it all. Yeah.
God, it's so interesting. I like this quote that's in David Kalat's book that I cite frequently about the Toho Godzilla movies. But he says, movies like Godzilla Raids Again and Rodan depict a modern civilization that has invaded nature to fuel its expansion across the globe. Old cultures like the fishermen of Raids Again, and then also the miners of Rodan, are swept aside by progress. And in response, the Earth sends out a force to exact revenge. And I really like that interpretation of this and Raids Again as like sort of a dual package.
It's hard not to think about those things in movies like this, because they're so obviously a reaction to the way that humans are treating the Earth. And so then you have to be forced to ask the question, what should we have done differently? And that's, I think, that's where the compelling thing about especially these older monster movies is.
Yeah, I agree. It's really, really interesting stuff. Let's talk about some special effects things. Do you want to talk about Rodan or the Meganulon itself first? I have interesting things about both of them.
Let's talk about Meganulon first, because that is familiar.
Yes. Yeah. It's so funny. It wasn't super intentional, but like I knew it. I knew that it would work out this way, that like Megaguirus, we watched that. And then literally like a month later, we get like Megaguirus Origins.
Right.
It's very funny. Yeah. So the Meganulon, they're like, they're basically like the larval form of what Megaguirus will eventually be. They hadn't invented Megaguirus when they made this movie. That was like, an expansion that they figured out later on.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it is funny that like you have these like bug dudes that never actually become like dragonflies or anything like that, even though they cite that like these are in the movie, in the context of the movie, they specifically are like, these are these are akin to a prehistoric dragonfly in their larval stage right now. And they kind of tease that and then never do it. So it's like, nope, it's a completely different flying monster that we're going to have now.
Yeah. Look, the city didn't get flooded this time. They didn't have as much room to do their weird thing.
Right.
Weird bug shit.
Yeah. So the interesting thing about this Meganulon suit is that it's operated by 3 actors at a time at any given time.
And one of them is hunched down in the front, right? Is like
it has
crouched down.
Yeah.
I think I actually caught this time how the sort of larva moved. I feel like I was struggling with previous larva to really like conceptualize how the person was in there, but this time I think it was like a little bit more obvious.
Yeah, let me just send you my show notes. I have 2 pictures. There's like them getting into the suit, and there's like but like when you see like it's so good when you see a close-up of what the actual suit looks like. You know, they put it obviously like behind furniture and like on cliffs and off in the distance a lot, so you don't get a great look at it in the movie like intentionally, but when you really look at it, you see the legs of all 3 men making up the 6 legs of the Meganulon. It's very funny.
It's such a goofy suit, which I think is a testament to how well this movie is made.
Yeah.
You know, because it looks so cool in the movie, and they, you know, the angles they shoot it at, where it's like climbing up like a set of stairs or like along like a hill, like all the things, all the ways they choose to show it make it look infinitely cooler than the suit actually looks. Yeah,
it really does. They do a good job. They're very well choreographed. It's there's, like I said, there's only 3 actors at a time, and I think they cycled them through. So like the 2 guys that play Rodan in this movie that we're familiar with, that have played Godzilla, Hiro Nakajima and Katsumi Tezuka, who played Anguirus in Raids Again. Hey. Both of them are in the suit here. In addition to Suichi Hirose was sometimes in the suit. He ends up being Kong, and Ghidorah in future movies. So so like all of our kaiju heavy hitters are like in this one insect body with its, I love its little like, big old butt that's always like shaking in the back, that's dragging behind it. It's such a fun design.
It's like a little like super group, but in a bug. Like instead of a bunch of musicians getting together and making like a rock star band, it's like let's get together and make a rock star bug.
And no surprise, since it's like 3 guys in a suit, it's like 15 feet long. So gosh. it's a big one that's walking around. I'm sure it wasn't easy.
You know, it's so funny because you see the scale like comparison graphics all the time for like the canon size of monsters. I want to see the actual size monsters all next to each other, because this suit being 3 people and being as long as it is means that it's like bigger, at least in like length, than like most Godzilla suits probably end up being.
Probably so. Yeah,
so
like if you like
fucking huge.
If like Godzilla laid next to it, this would be longer.
Tiny.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Not tiny, but you know what I mean.
But he'd be like half the size. Yeah, like that's so funny.
And this thing's just like a little, you know, larva in comparison to any of those things.
Yeah. It's so funny. Originally they were going to make them more like termites, I think, and then they were thinking like mole crickets, and then they settled on dragonfly nymphs.
Gotcha.
Probably just the cool look of it. I think because you get the head of like a dragonfly nymph is so striking, you know?
Yeah.
And does feel very like this movie, of all the kaiju movies we've watched, in the first half of it feels so much more like a typical like American sci-fi monster movie than any of these ever had. And like, good and bad. Like on one hand, it like feels so familiar that like the awe and terror of the original Godzilla isn't really present with the Meganulon, because it is just like a humanoid bug monster, which I've like seen in many American B movies.
Yeah.
But it's still like well done. It's still really cool. And I love the idea of like an entire fucking army going after this like chirpy little bug with a big butt.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, it's interesting, like within the universe, this idea that, you know, this is the threat and like no one really knows what's coming, you know? So like they treat it as scary as anything else.
Sure.
Which I think works super well for the movie.
Yeah. And I also think a testament to them is that they don't try to like, once they pull the trigger on it, they don't try to hide it anymore. Like when the Meganulon first appears just like in someone's house, I'm like, they're going to leave, get help, and come back, and it's going to be gone, and they're not going to believe them, right? They're going to continue this trend of like, it's actually recovering for your brother is actually the killer. But no, they come back, and the bug's just fucking there, and now they're chasing the bug for like the whole next act. Yeah. Like they don't try to backtrack it at all. It's sort of like, look, we've unveiled it, you've seen it, we can't pull this pull this back now.
They have a much better twist in their pocket, and they know it.
Right. They've got a whole other big old egg that's waiting to be hatched. Yeah. But Rodan itself, or themselves, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, Nakajima and Tezuka both play Rodan. Nakajima is like the primary one. Tezuka was the backup. I guess just real quick, the reason for the differences in names, in America, it's Rodan. In Japanese, it's Radon, basically like a truncation of Pteranodon, Radon, also radiation. It works both ways. Honestly, really clever name. And I think literally the only reason they changed it in America is because we have a gas called radon here in America. So it's like, that's what the name of it in America is. And it would just be sort of weird and confusing. So I understand why they just flip the letters.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably my bias of having known that Rodan is a thing that existed for, I don't know. I didn't know what it was, but I'd heard the name plenty. I think Rodan I like better. Radon's a cleverer name, but it makes me think more of, probably because of that gas, makes me think like way more sci-fi than even this sci-fi movie gets.
Yeah, and like Rodan, it's such a distinct name. Like nothing else sounds like that.
Yeah.
Originally, like I said, they're going to do the Archaeopteryx was going to be the inspiration. So there is concept art of like a more bird-like Rodan, which is kind of fun, where he actually has full-on feathers and stuff.
Ooh.
Yeah, you can see that in the show notes.
Oh, look at this little chicken.
Yeah, he's like a chicken, like vulture kind of thing. Which is really fun. I think, that Honda was more interested in like kind of a more classically dinosaur, almost dragon-like dude, which makes sense. I think that this bird-like Rodan would have been a really cool idea. It probably would have been harder to pull off, I think.
This gives me like early or middle monster vibes, and Rodan gives me like final monster vibes, and I don't know how to articulate why, so I'm glad we got the one that we did get, even though I do think this is cool.
I would love to see some feathers, but I'm glad when we got. I think it's just because I think we're just sort of culturally adapted to the idea of dragons being like a big bad kind of thing. So the more dragon like Rodan looks, the more it's going to feel like a final monster. And like the feathers are like, even though birds are can be scary, the feathers immediately make him feel a little more like a soft boy,
Well, and I think unless you can really pull off like big bird, like big scary ass bird, which I just don't know that they would have been able to nail like the scope of a big scary fucking bird. I think the dinosaur is always going to hit a little bit harder. I didn't realize that Rodan was a dinosaur to begin with, so like that was interesting to me. I learned it from this movie. I think I predicted it was a dragon, and it's not a dragon, but it is more literally a dinosaur. It's more like a pterodactyl adjacent kind of which
thing,
I love.
I think you'd think.
I think that's so cool.
It is really cool. Body of the suit was tailored right for Nakajima's body, which is really cool. I'm sure that helped. Do you want to guess how much this one weighs?
I just saw it. I scrolled up so that you could keep asking me questions, but I didn't in time to not see that answer.
It's about 150 pounds. So like a lighter one, but still plenty heavy.
Oh, sure.
And I think what's interesting about the Rodan suit is that, like with Godzilla, he is in a suit that he's walking around in. It's still like Godzilla does have a roughly humanoid shape. With Rodan, obviously it's like big old wings, right? So like the wings are constructed of Indian cloth and coated with liquid latex.
Oh, God.
So heavy and hard to move in, especially if you're just using your arms. You can't lift those things up. He's got to keep keeping his arms up all the time. Like you pretty much never see Rodan closing his arms in this movie. Like so he'd always have to be up most of the time, right? So what they did to counteract it was use like bamboo rods, like inserted into it. Like they bent those into it. So there'd be a little bit more support in the wings. They would use piano wires as well when it's flying. Like even if there's a guy in the suit, like
Sure.
they don't need to be holding it up, but they'll use those to help. So he doesn't have to be physically holding it up himself as much. But even with the piano wires, they weren't marionetting him. He would still control how much how much it would move. It was literally just there for support. He still kind of was in control over that.
That makes sense.
Another thing that made it challenging was that the knee joints, they did construct them to like more accurately reflect those of real birds. So they moved in the opposite direction. So like he couldn't just walk in this suit because the knee joints were bent backwards. So like, which I think is why you just never see Rodan stomping around a city in this movie.
Which is fine. It worked better for the movie anyway, for that not to be the case,
Right.
It's such a bizarre shape and proportion. Like I do not envy. I mean, I don't envy any of them, but like I'd at least want to try out a Godzilla suit. This I have no interest in trying out. It is so bizarre.
I mean, I understand why when they do Mothra, they're just like, it's just a marionette. We're not putting a person in that suit. We're good.
Totally. Yeah. It's got such a like strange long body too that makes me once again really want to see like a more modern version of, or like a modern interpretation of a Rodan monster. Because I feel like you could go, I assume I will at some point, but like but since I haven't seen it, I'm like thinking of like different directions it could go, because it could become, my first thought was like, oh, it'll become more like an actual pteranodon or pterodactyl or something like that, which would be cool, I guess. But then I was like, or you could really kind of monster it up and take advantage of the fact that the original suit has this sort of like awkwardly unnatural long body for what that monster is. So you could almost kind of like take a serpentine approach to it, while mixing it with like a pteranodon, and that would be really cool. But I have no idea. I'm excited to see.
I'm excited for you to see future Rodans, because you already know he's showing up again at one point in time, just a matter of when and how much. There are some puppets involved with this Rodan. There's like a hand puppet of the upper half of him with a movable head and wings that they made for some close-up shots. I think when he like shoots his like version of atomic breath or whatever, it's a hand puppet. The newborn Rodan that we see when he's a little baby, that's also a hand puppet. It had a wingspan of about a foot, so like a very small, very tiny little baby.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, real cute. They did. I think it's pretty obvious when you watch it that like when they sometimes when he's in flight, especially when there's both of them, they're like a wire operated models, right? That they have. Tsubaraya and his team, would operate those. This is a technique, like when they came up with this technique, this is the first time that they deploy it. The stuff that they do for Mothra and any other flying monsters later, like they basically figure out their process for operating a wire operated like model in the sky with this movie specifically, which is pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. This also is the first one I think that Tsubaraya did, my understanding at least, it's the first one that Tsubaraya did where like there were multiple versions of miniature sets in different scales, because you didn't always have one monster walking through the miniature set at the same size, because these were flying around, like they wouldn't need to always be at the same size, right? Like Nakajima is always going to be the same sized guy when he's in that Godzilla suit. With Rodan, when he's flying, it's a lot easier to play with perspective, because like he can be like closer to the camera if he's up in the sky, or like, like you can play with that. Or a lot of times it's just like the repercussions of him flying are blowing wind and destroying buildings. Those buildings don't have to be to scale with Nakajima, because you're not even seeing Rodan next to them necessarily. Right. So like there's a lot of different scaled miniatures here, more so than the first two Godzilla movies, from my understanding.
You know what's interesting though? I never had that thought. I never thought about scaling in this movie. Whereas with Megaguirus, it was bothering me. Remember, I was like, something's off about the scaling. And part of that is that Godzilla is also there, so they have to like compare it against that. But even before Godzilla was in the picture, it was hard to pin down, the size of the Meganulon or, Megaguirus. So this movie really, I think, took that and took advantage of it, as opposed to letting it become kind of a problem for them.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah,
That's probably why some of the miniatures look like the best they ever have.
they really have. It is, yeah. I mean, this, you were seeing innovation on screen with this movie, you know. And I wouldn't be surprised if we've been watching movies that come after this that have sort of, you know, it sort of settled on like what they can do and figure things out. Like Mothra versus Godzilla wasn't necessarily in like inventing wildly new things that it was doing. It was just playing with what they've already established and playing with it well. I do think sometimes you can kind of tell when like, oh, you were inspired by this and actually this inspired you to like invent something new.
Yeah.
I think that kind of comes through in this movie, and that's why the miniatures look so good, because they're probably excited to be like,
Sure.
shit, we can build these buildings at like a totally different scale. It's going to look better now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even put that together, but yeah.
Yeah. I have some other like special effects things that'll come up as we talk about plot stuff.
Okay.
So we can go character by character, or we can just go through plot stuff in general. What feels better for you for this one?
Oh boy, this is one of those movies where I walk away like not really knowing any characters' names except
That's
for
okay.
like my movie crush for this one, and then like Shigeru's an easy name to remember, so I know who that guy is. So
Yeah.
I get probably for that reason, maybe let's start with characters so I can solidify some of those.
Sure. Yeah, Shigeru's our lead. He's a mining engineer. It is Kenji Sahara yet again, but this is when it's fun to go out of time, because like we've seen him established as a leading man. He's a hero in King Kong versus Godzilla. He's a villain in Mothra versus Godzilla. We're going to continue to see him. So we've seen him in two wildly different roles. He's such a little boy in this movie. This is like one of his earliest roles, his first like major lead role. He is such a baby in this movie. It's so sweet.
And he's like the hot lead guy. That's
he is. He gets to be the hot lead guy who gets amnesia. Yeah, I mean, he credits Honda for like helping him really hone his craft and get his acting legs like this early in his career. And apparently he like went so like Honda really liked working with him because he was so committed and went so hard. Like he did a lot of research on real life memory loss and did like a version of method acting for it where he would like unfocus his vision and like try to whip himself into like a paranoid state apparently. Which like got a little bit
Bro, you didn't need to do that based on the script.
right I mean, there's like stories where he would like run into things and like rip his pants and stuff because he's like in his like paranoid state, like unaware of stuff because he's so like unfocused, and would just like stare blankly and things like that.
Bro's just a clown.
It's so funny. I love it. I do think you can tell, because I like when I did think it was striking. We'll talk about the plot aspect of how the amnesia is deployed, but I do think that like the way that he visually looks as a person with amnesia looks very different than like how I ever see people portray amnesia. Cause like they don't focus on like, I can't remember who I am. Who are you? They focus on like someone who's like basically an empty shell from like severe trauma. And you can see like this emptiness in his eyes where he's just like staring blankly, and like he genuinely looks like he doesn't know where he is or who anyone is, which I cannot say the same for a lot of actors who just play amnesia as, who am I? Who are you? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's something way more haunting about his portrayal, because, and I don't know if that makes it more or less accurate. I have no idea. Never had amnesia. But like, you know, I think it's true that even when you have amnesia, like you still recognize the world around you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like his portrayal is that sort of like combination of like being haunted by the thing he experienced and amnesia. So like he really does look just kind of like lost and simultaneously in awe, but in like a bad way at all times when he doesn't have his memory. And it's like really kind of creepy.
It is very creepy. Yeah.
And he just looks like a different person based on that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
so I guess it was worth it to tear your pants on set.
Sure. Look, he clearly wasn't a nightmare to work with that because he kept getting roles in like every Godzilla movie after that. So
look, all the stories you told had nothing to do with terrorizing anyone else.
That's very true.
Which is where you hear the stories of people being shitty while they're method acting.
Some actors could learn from Kenji Sahara's version of method acting. Yeah, Shigeru is such an interesting character because like yeah, he's deployed as like the typical young hot lead that we always talk about, right? Like that's your guy. But and to certain extents, he like does some actiony hero things, like riding the fucking cart into the Mechanulan.
Oh yeah,
it's so funny. But like at the same time, I feel like this movie also like doesn't try playing it very realistically. Doesn't try to pretend that he could hop into a jet and chase after Rodan. Like once the story moves away from the mining stuff, I think that's why they have to give him amnesia, because they kind of just have to like get him out of the way for a little while, so then they could deploy him again later in a triumphant like way to be like, his memory is back and now he can provide you information about Rodan. And then that's really all he does for the rest of the movie.
It makes I like that you preface that with like he doesn't jump in a jet and save the day, because like it just would undermine everything they were setting up as far as like who this movie is about, you know? Like he's one of the miners, so like he's one of the most grounded characters in a very grounded sci-fi movie, and so for him to do anything that's just sort of like weirdly heroic outside of character would just, I think it would derail things, you know? So having him lose his memory ends up giving him his own personal journey along the way too, which not every one of the heroes we've covered really we can say that much about. One of my favorite action heroes we've talked about, she had no character story.
Oh my god, yeah. And the Mechagearus love an action hero where every reckless decision she makes is correct.
You will not learn.
being mean to people is good. Firing black hole guns, A-okay. Everything will be fine as long as you're a reckless action hero and learn nothing.
Yeah, if you haven't seen that one yet, I can't wait for you to experience her. She's my favorite.
It's so funny. I mean, in the original or one draft of the script, like one big change that there was just one Rodan. They added the second one later on, but the other change was that like Sahara's character Shigeru was going to like lead the effort to kill Rodan. He would be the one like being like, we're going to dynamite the volcano and I'm going to dynamite the volcano. Like they did put him in that role. I think it was a conscious choice by Honda, since we talked about he wanted this movie to be like scientifically accurate and realistic. I think that was probably part of the thought, is sort of like, we're going to treat this not like the thing that will differentiate this from a lot of American science fiction monster movies is that we're not going to let our hot guy just suddenly become an action hero. We gave him the coal mining thing. And it kind of worked, but also left him traumatized with amnesia, like, and seriously hurt. Yeah. That's going to be what happens when a regular dude does an action hero thing. We have scientists and military men who would know how to dynamite a volcano. Like, we can have him there in the area because it does make sense that they might ask him questions since he's seen Rodan, but he wouldn't be the one concocting this plot. And like, it's weird because I do think that from a storytelling perspective, it maybe makes this feel a little bit less satisfying in that way, because you don't see this character that's your hero like being able to be heroic throughout it. So like I did feel a little bit weird on watching it, sort of like, oh, our main characters are just like not part of this final act really at all. They really play, other than being like, Rodan's a thing, here's how I saw him be born. Once they give that information, like, they have really nothing. They're just not present really in the narrative after that, and I think that makes it weird. I don't know that it was a bad decision, because you're right. This whole theme of like the working class just getting fucked over by these events, like, it wouldn't make sense if it's not realistic for him to like rise above things and like save the day, but it would be satisfying if he did, I think, from like a movie perspective.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about it in those terms, but it does make a lot of sense, especially when you put it in the context of action movies or sci-fi movies or things like that. I think maybe because this movie starts with miners and it is so constantly populated with half a dozen to a dozen characters at any given time, even when those characters aren't necessarily like speaking or part of the action, this movie feels so much about like the working class as like almost an organism itself, you know?
Yeah,
like,
oh sure.
And so like the way that people move through this movie and the way that they talk to each other and the way that they interact, and the way they're just constantly present, like even in scenes where like the woman is like directing people onto buses, like she has like a moment, but like in the midst of this sort of like crowd sort of action, It's something about it made it feel better than when I walk away from a movie that seems like it is meant to have characters I'm supposed to remember and then I don't know who any of them are. This one, it always just felt like they're constantly working together in kind of the same environment that I assume you would need to work when you're in a mine or when you're on a fishing vessel or when you're in a factory, you know. Doesn't necessarily make for like great character arcs, which I recognize.
That is a really interesting take on it, though, that it's almost like a collective cast rather than like Kenji Sahara is top billed because he is technically the main character. He is like the POV character that we're seeing things through and the character we root for, but like the main character is like the collective of coal miners and the collective of people that are involved in the situation. That is something that I guess makes like you can do in a kaiju movie that is harder to pull off in a lot of other movies with threats, because the threat is literally meant to be so big and impacting so many people. Like, it's weird because it's not the story structure that we're used to.
Yeah.
But if you were to have a movie to deploy that structure, it is a kaiju movie like this, you know,
it's
like
a kaiju movie
different. And
I think it has to be particular groups of people, right? Because the one time I took more of an issue, I think, was King Kong versus Godzilla, where I was like, this cast is big. I don't remember who everybody is. They're not all necessarily distinct. We could like cut it down. But I think that movie wanted it to be sort of an ensemble cast, and there wasn't this like represented group like there is here with the miners or the military or the tourists. Like, everybody is represented as like a group in this movie, where in that one it was like, here's our main reporter character, here's our main, you know. So I think that is probably the distinction, and I think it serves some of the working class vibe of this movie.
That totally makes sense. I'm glad. I feel like you've kind of changed my mind on that, because I came out of this movie being like, that's a ding against it, but I think that makes a lot of sense. Like that, like I think that's a really interesting way to look at its structure.
Well, and I think one of the things that's tough is like, is he supposed to be the hero of the movie? Because if that's the case, then it is a ding against the movie. You know what I mean?
And I do think, you know, in the defense of the viewer, he is set up to be the hero for like the first half of that movie, if not first 3/4 of it. It really is like the very end that's just sort of like, what the hell is this guy going to do with Rodan? He can't do anything about this.
I mean, it is a weird subversion, right? Like, if you've ever seen a horror movie that subverts the sort of tropes, like, it's striking for that reason, where like most horror movies set up your final girl, your hero or whatever. If they kill them halfway through, which some horror movies do, you're sort of like, whoa, what the fuck do we do next? You know?
True. It's
and this
kind of
isn't
a cool twist.
that, but he gets amnesia and is like rendered, you know, or he's sort of like, I don't know. I don't want to say he's like humbled back down, because like they're all working class dudes. It's not like he's, you know, extraordinary in the sort of conventional sci-fi or hero, whatever sort of trope, but like you said, he is rendered much less useful until he can get his memory back. Really interesting. Speaking of incredibly useful characters,
Kyo, she's our female lead. Here's my thing. Like, okay, so she's played by Yumi Shirakawa. She was only 19 when she did this. I think this is like probably her first role, if not one of her first roles. And she does go on to be in a handful of like sci-fi Toho films. Like very early in her career, and does a bunch of stuff after that. Never another Godzilla universe movie, so I don't think we're gonna see her again. Just fun fact, she was called the Japanese Grace Kelly when she debuted. Interestingly.
Okay.
But I mean, she's beautiful. You know. Here's my thing about Kyo, right? I mean, it is like a common refrain to sort of like, and here's your lady who we want to love, but
somebody and is now hanging out with somebody.
And then romantically entangled with someone, but given nothing to do otherwise, you know, complain about that. You know, it's movies from the 50s and 60s. A lot, you're going to see a lot of that, right? That said, one thing that I think particularly interested me and then disappointed me about this was that I do really like the idea that, so like, she is the sister of Goro, who's this like figure that's we see him like briefly at the beginning of the movie, but like barely a presence in the movie, like physically, but a huge presence in the miner storyline, because he's basically is this disgruntled miner, you know, who is like one that probably would be taken up the sign and protesting and going on strike and stuff, right? So when a bunch of miners get murdered, they're like, well, that guy was like mad all the fucking time, and like there's like clearly like there's a lot of tension between him and other miners. So obviously this guy is the killer, right? So Kyo is his sister, and I thought it was really interesting to have a character that has to like represent and take the brunt of like, oh my God, everyone's blaming my brother for this, and they hate me by proxy. And you get the tiniest sliver of that in the beginning where it's like, my brother didn't do this, right? But maybe what if he did? Like, do you think he did it? But what if he did? And I like that aspect, but I don't feel like they really go anywhere with that.
I think the reason they can't go anywhere is because of something you said earlier, which is once they go in on something in this movie, it's there to stay. Because she should be the character who is most interested and most invested in proving that the Mega Nulon and Rodan exist, right? That's her perfect motivation for needing the monsters to be real, which is a weird tension, right? Like, it's much better for the whole world if Goro is a murderer, right? Because that means there aren't monsters in the world that are going to rampage, and that's an interesting thing for her to be invested in. But because this is a much more straightforward movie, it's not really a horror movie, it's not a mystery or a murder mystery, like, I think all of her potential gets cut off early, because then she can't launch off of any of those really fantastic motives to move forward. So it's a bummer, because I think she's even built and set up with better things to do than a lot of the characters that we've complained about.
Absolutely.
But she just can't go anywhere with any of those things. And it all is because of the good story they're telling. It's a weird thing, you know.
For sure. Like, yeah, like what would she do in this movie, right? Like I think, you know, in this alternative version where Rodan isn't a factor and it is about these just like big bugs and human-sized monsters in the mine.
She's got everything.
And they go hard on the horror. I feel like she's even more the final girl than Shigeru is like the hero, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think if you go full on horror, she has all the reason, all the reason to be the central core of the story. And that it almost feels like it's going that direction early on when they are going harder on the horror thing, right? And you see like scenes of men being killed in the dark water with creepy sound, and they're talking about like only a head was left dangling by a shredded skin. Yeah, like there's some real, like there is genuine violence in this movie and like gore and stuff in it, and they really do go hard on the horror and focus on the human deaths and this person right at the center of like, my brother might be dead, but almost also you might be a killer, but there has to be something more to this, like all the drive to be a great story. But because this is a movie with Rodan in it instead, and the horror kind of has to stop, which again, I like Rodan and I like how the things escalate, but this character is the thing that is the most hurt by this being a Rodan movie and not this alternate horror movie that we have concocted based on the first half of it.
Yeah. Well, I think
it's such a weird situation to be in.
Oftentimes when we are able to like think up an alternate version of a story, it's not as equally as intriguing as the one we have, either because it's slightly worse or because the one we got isn't great. This isn't that scenario. We have a scenario where you could have made two completely different movies with the same beginning and they both would be really good. So it's like really kind of strange and a strange position to be in. And it really does change the trajectory of so many characters. You know, her probably being the primary one. I have to imagine, you know, our military guy ends up being basically a non-factor in the version where she's the star, you know?
Yeah. It's definitely one of the more fascinating, like, hot young lead women in these movies that don't get to do anything. Like, it is definitely one of the more fascinating situations with that.
Because there's so much... They're like, some of them are just like empty shells, which I hate to say, but like she has motivation. Yeah. She has things she cares about. We know where she's coming from. Her relationships do matter. Like, it's just at a certain point plot wise, she's got nothing to do.
Honestly, she's the, I feel like she feels the most of the women in the Showa era Godzilla movies that we've watched. And even, you know, Return of Godzilla too. Like, she's the one who feels the most like, of akin to Emiko in the original Godzilla movie.
She's the connective tissue, for sure.
Right. Like, she feels like she is so close to being Emiko's role and like the type of like personality that she seems to be. And like, being connected to Shigeru and Goro, you know, like that connective tissue right there. Yeah. But like Emiko kind of carries that whole plot line of information, relaying information and emotional connection and stuff.
Yeah.
And Kyo, like, she's just not able to do that. They don't really give her that ability.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of the original Godzilla movie, Akihiko Harada's back again as Dr. Kashiwagi, the director of paleontology. Serizawa's another scientist again.
Serizawa.
Yeah. I mean, this is probably, I feel like of the ones we've seen, this is probably like his least interesting role that he's done, because he is literally just the scientist who gives exposition.
Yeah.
really,
I feel like
really given nothing else to do in this movie other than that.
I really feel like those positions, those scientist positions can be full on characters. We've seen it before, but if they're not going to be, if they're going to provide exposition, or if they're just going to like make sure we're all up to speed, it kind of is the perfect place to put like a previous actor who maybe can't commit to the full movie. Like, and I'm here for it. Like, like
it's fine. I'm never mad to see the guy. Exactly. Like, it's fine. It's just like, I know you can do more than this, but you know what? You got a paycheck for just coming on set and just talking some science words.
Yeah.
And fine.
Love
I'm rather it be you than someone who doesn't deliver the science words as well.
Yeah.
As well as you do. So it's fine.
Yeah. You better give us that techno babble. Sci-fi babble. It's not really techno babble. Whatever.
It's not. Yeah, I wouldn't call it techno babble, but like, I mean, like, he's a dude who's just sort of like, maybe it's hydrogen bombs.
Right. It's like real
maybe
stuff.
They're dinosaurs. Like, maybe it's global. And again, fucking love that like global warming is talked about in this movie from 1956.
Everyone, listen. Not new.
So good. Yeah, and they're just like it's casually like, you've heard this theory of global warming, right? Yeah, interesting. Like, yeah, interesting. Al Gore didn't invent global warming.
What? No.
The last like actor of interest that I had on my list was Yoshifumi Tajima as Izukai, the reporter who is Kumayama from Mothra vs. Godzilla. Shows up.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Who was your crush in this movie?
Oddly enough, it's like the I guess the military guy. He's like the other main character, kind of. He's like there from basically beginning to end. I don't know. There's not really a crush in this movie, but if there were one, it's basically that guy.
Yeah. I know there's a police detective. I'm not actually
sure. Is it a police detective? What is he?
There was like a police detective.
He's not always with the military.
Yeah, I think it's because the guy who's like fourth build, Akio Kobori, who I don't think is in another Godzilla movie. I'll double check, but he's Nishimura, the police detective.
Yeah, it's Nishimura. Okay, so he's a police detective. Honestly, It was weird because I couldn't entirely figure out like what is, because he looks similar to a lot of the military people, but he's not. It's very clear that he's not with them. But you can always find him because he like wears his collar out, and he's in like every fucking scene basically. So
that's so funny because he like didn't even stick out to me. I was just like, another cop guy. I don't know, whatever.
He's in like every scene.
Yeah.
Like if they're gonna show 4 people, he's one of the 4 people.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
I had face blindness for cops, I guess. I don't know.
Look. Yeah, that's true.
Oh my gosh. I'm double checking. I'm actually seeing different places call him a police detective, another place calls him a police chief. So I don't know, but he's a cop of some kind. He's not military as far as I can tell. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
yeah. And I think this is the only time we're going to see him on this podcast.
I think that's fine. He's not notable. He's just there all the time.
Right?
He's just constantly there.
Right.
So
yeah. Cool. What kind of plot stuff you want to talk about?
Oh boy. See, it's honestly, it's tough because it is kind of like, as weirdly structured as it is a pretty straightforward story, right? Like they're mining, they discover something weird. They think it's one thing. It turns out to be a bigger boss. And then there's the twist where there's 2 of them and then they have to figure out what to do about it. Like, I'm not really sure where to go because of that. Like,
okay.
Where?
Well, you know what? No, we've got separate, like very clear sections though.
Yeah.
Right? You have the opening horror section, bug section,
love it,
coal mining section. I mean, we've already talked about it, but like, I do think the most striking thing about this movie going into it, knowing that it's a kaiju movie called Rodan, is how much of the opening is just a very like visually and thematically dark claustrophobic horror movie about something scary happening in mines that is murdering people violently, shredding them. A miner is getting blamed for it because who would expect it to be giant prehistoric bugs in a coal mine? And people are, people like Shigeru are just like intent on solving the mystery and either clearing Goro's name or finding Goro or figuring out what's actually going on. And that's kind of the driver of like the whole first half of the movie, honestly.
Yeah, it totally is. And it's easy to get invested in it and kind of forget that what you're building towards is a big monster movie because they do that portion of it so well.
Yeah.
I mean, and the characters in the movie really sort of begin to like lose control of the scenario quite quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like once they feel like they've got a direction and then they turn around and somebody else's throat is slashed. Like it really ends up escalating like fast,
It does.
Even when they do start to get a handle on it and they realize like, oh, it's this weird like larva monster thing, like getting it to where they feel like they can have it trapped, which is back in the mine,
right,
which is where it started killing people in the first place. It's killing people along the way. So they're like, oh, great, it's in the mine. And they go to the mine and there's like more dead bodies,
Right.
Like it really is this like dire, terrifying, weird, sort of desperate attempt to like, one, figure out what's going on, and then two, once they figure out what's going on, just like contain it in any way possible. I mean, they don't really touch on this, but like if they get to the point where they can contain the Mega Nulon in the mine, I mean, they're shutting the mine down. Like they have to blow the mine up or they have to like collapse it or something. And they don't even really have too much time to get into that, but like that's the scenario. Like if this were a grounded sort of like mine, But I mean, like, that's the thing is, like, if this were all about just the mining horror of it all, it would end with that being sort of like the sort of sobering reality end of the movie is like, we solved the problem, but like now, and we've saved lives, but now what happens to all the miners who were making a living mining,
the whole community is fucked over. I mean, that's
it's sort of the oxygen destroyer situation where they don't really touch on it, but like the oxygen destroyer killed all life in the bay. Like they don't touch on it really until, I can't remember what movie it is where like they are searching for new places to fish. Maybe it's honestly raids,
it's
like
raids again.
They eventually sort of address like, oh, we have to find new places to fish because we literally killed everything. That would be this movie's version, or this version of this movie's version of that moment.
That's that. Oh my God, I love that you said that. That is such a good point because like the bittersweet ending is just like you've completely demolished an entire community because that was the livelihood of it. I mean, that's a real world issue, right? That is still to this day the reason that a lot of people are against like green energy has nothing to do with like the environmentalism. It's just because so many communities at in certain parts of the country are founded around coal mines, and if the coal mines are closed, what do you fucking do with this entire population of people that are out of a job that is what their skill has been in for their whole life? You can't just get another job.
That
coal
community
mining
dies, and we've seen it happen, right? So like, there are towns that are just like ghost. I mean, ghost towns are real, and it's for those reasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Towns that were like along and thriving on like railroad travel that no longer need railroad like they just die. They just die, and that's basically what would have happened to this particular community.
Yeah,
because they solved the problem. Like
but I mean, that's again real world. If we solve the problem of clean energy and we're just sort of like no more fossil fuels, no more coal ever, that is law. We close them all. That doesn't solve the problem of what to do with the people whose livelihoods are based on that. It truly is like that double-edged sword thing, right? Like it
highlights that the problem is much bigger and much more intertwined and like really rooted in more than just the one thing. Which is where you end up in these like tricky scenarios where you have people who are like advocating for, stopping all that stuff and forgetting about the actual like people involved. And I think that would make that alternate version of this movie like extremely prescient, I guess, to really sort of be like, this is the consequence of what you've done, and really it only just fucked over the working class people,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not really present in the movie, but I mean, the end of the movie is very somber, and I think you could when you think of that context, that only makes it sadder. That it's like not only are we kind of sad in the way that we killed these creatures, but that mine's caved in now, guys. What are we gonna do?
That mine's caved in, and I know this jumps ahead because there's like specific parts in the way that it builds, but like even their solution for Rodan the monster requires them to evacuate an entire community, and it's not because
they erupted a whole fucking volcano.
It's not right. It's not because they temporarily need to leave while Godzilla rampages and then they can come back and fix everything. It's like, no, we need you to leave because we're gonna blow up a volcano.
Oh my god, yeah, that's so true. It really is just sort of like, maybe we simply did too much in this situation, actually.
But I mean, like, that's what these especially early movies are about, right? There is no like everybody wins scenario, and it's not about like the first Godzilla movie and this Godzilla movie and Raids, honestly, when it's at its best, like isn't about like the victory of all parties involved. It's really not. It's about the consequences of actions, you know? So like getting Godzilla away isn't really a victory. It's like getting the better scenario or the better consequence. It's still a consequence. He's still rampaged. It still fucked everybody up, you know? This movie's kind of like that in that like we have this problem and we can figure out a way to stop it, but that doesn't mean we didn't get the consequences of our actions, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Holy shit. Damn. You know, I'm going to be honest with you, man. When I first watched this, I was like, oh, that was pretty good. But I wasn't like, I don't know how high it was on my list. I was sort of like, it makes me feel like, makes me appreciate the original Godzilla so much more because that movie spoke to so many things that I love. But like talking about it here, I'm like, well, there's so much more to this movie that I wasn't even really thinking about when I was watching it.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of depth to this movie, just like with the original Godzilla, that is like just below the surface, but clearly in like there, that you just like dig just the slightest bit. Mine just a little bit deeper.
No, don't.
and it's actually like in a really, really, really fascinating movie. Yeah. Like I'm liking it a lot more talking about it, actually.
I think it's tricky. And I think it goes back to something you said really early on in this episode, which is this movie has people who are like have really strong affinity for it. And possibly it's because it is a movie they saw before, or maybe some of the other ones. I think this movie's really good and really good in ways that the original Godzilla is. But if you see this movie after seeing the original Godzilla, a lot of the impact happened from seeing the first Godzilla movie. So it doesn't hit you quite in the same way of that first impact that Godzilla does, because you have seen some of those takeaways before. It doesn't make this movie worse. It just means you kind of have to remember how hard it hit when you heard it the first time, you know?
Yeah. I mean, even, like I think it doesn't help that, like, you have the Ifukube score that sounds very similar to Godzilla's score.
Sure.
I wouldn't want him to not do it because he's amazing. Yeah. But it's hard not to think of Godzilla, me personally, having so much love for especially that original Godzilla movie. It's hard to not watch that and hear Ifukube's like Rodan theme and just think of Godzilla instead of Rodan, which is not fair, but it's also really hard.
It's not fair. But it's hard because in most situations where you run into something like this, and I don't think it applies to this one, but in most situations you run into something like this, it's easy to say and often true that it's like, oh, well, this is kind of just derivative, right? Like you kind of just derived the same thing. But I don't think Rodan's derivative. I think it just explores the same things, like it is a very different movie than the original Godzilla. And I think when you put the two next to each other, you get the same sort of lessons or feelings or vibes, but it's not because they're the same movie, But I think so often that is the case that it's easy to just be reminded of the thing you saw first, or it's easy to sort of chalk it up to like, well, I've seen this before. But I don't think that makes Rodan a bad movie. I think it actually means, I think it's actually a sign that it's a really, really fucking good movie.
Yeah. Like Honda can do it again. Like
basically,
Yeah.
Because it's not, because he's not matching beat for beat. That's not what he did here. He structured a completely different movie.
Yeah. Oh God, that is so fat. This whole group, like just did something like similar but different. God, that's so interesting. You know what's funny too is that like I had like pre-podcast, I'd like joked as I was watching some Godzilla movies, especially for the first time, like I would kind of joke about like I don't really like Rodan very much because I do think that I don't think that he's often well deployed in other Godzilla
interesting.
movies.
Okay.
But
I don't
mean,
know if he's even necessarily as like
right.
It's weird to say this. I don't know that Rodan is the star of Rodan, you know?
No, I think
so. I'm not totally
we'll
surprised, but I can't
that.
wait to see.
Yeah, but I often don't like out of all the kaiju that are movies, I don't really usually like how they try to personify him if he has a personality or how they use him or something like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's like in jest because like I'm more neutral on Rodan and then have a lot of love for other monsters. I don't hate them or whatever. But I am kind of like, now that I'm seeing some of the context for like the root of where Rodan came from, it's making me understand why people have such an affinity for the character just because he's in this movie, which is a really good movie. But also I'm like, am I going to feel, I don't know, maybe I'll feel something different about like what thematically represents and stuff in future movies or how they use them. Like now that I'm revisiting it.
Sure.
But you're also right. I kind of maybe feel a little bit neutral on Rodan, the character or creature in this movie, just because everything around the movie is so much more interesting. Rodan themselves are sort of tools for this story that they're telling more than being like sort of like you said the star of the show.
Yeah, and I think Rodan represents things sort of getting to a point of like out of control, you know?
Yeah.
Like and so Rodan, I think, you know, obviously Godzilla in the original Godzilla represents something that is very rooted in like man versus nature, like very much so, but that Godzilla doesn't necessarily feel like just a force of nature, you know what I mean? And we've talked about Godzillas that do feel like just a force of nature, and I don't say that to minimize. Sometimes the force of nature of it all is what's cool about a monster. I feel like Rodan is in this movie very much a force of nature, but is also, because of the way the movie's structured, not in the movie that much. Really and so it's a force of nature that you're not really contending with until shit has totally hit the fan, and it is the shit that's hitting the fan, you know?
Right.
Like the buildup itself isn't really Rodan. And one of the things that I think this movie does well that doesn't necessarily serve Rodan well, but serves the movie well, is actually keeping them at a distance. I mean, the twist of Rodan, I think, works because you don't see Rodan very much, and they jump from city to city to city talking about the massive destruction Rodan is able to cause at such a quick pace. And since you don't actually see it, even though they say this should be impossible for Rodan to get here this fast, it's not presented like, my theory wasn't like, oh, there's more than one of them. My theory was like, oh shit, it's so fast that it gets in and out and no one's even witnessing it. Like that was what was scary about Rodan to me in this movie. It's like not seeing the killer in the movie. Often that's scarier. Yeah. It just means you don't see the killer. Like, so we don't really see Rodan. Rodan doesn't have like a personality in the way that some other monsters we see do. And it's because of the story they're telling. It just means I walk away not being like, damn, that Rodan though. You know what I mean?
Right. God, what a weird movie in a good way.
Yeah. I think it's weird to walk away not having, and I'm sure there are people who are like, no, you're wrong. I fucking love Rodan, like the monster after this movie. And I get that. But like, it just, it's like, I love Anguirus. Anguirus was there in front and center for the first half of the movie, but like there, you know what I mean? Yeah. And like very had distinct movements and a way about it and all this sort of stuff. Rodan's appeal is that it is so high up and it is so distant and it's so fast that you miss it, you know?
Yeah. And
like
there's two of them.
Jet, and there's two of them.
Yeah. Okay. So first half of the movie transitions to the next half because after Shihiro runs a fucking coal mine train into the Meganulon,
so funny.
It caves. It's cool, but very funny. I'm just like, this is so silly
and surprising. It's silly, but it's surprisingly like, I'm just going to consistently praise how this movie looks. There's truly only one scene in this movie where I was like, that doesn't look very good. Even the scene where he's like riding the cart down the tunnel, that's like very obviously him just like standing on a not moving, like standing on a stationary, but like bumping up and down cart. Even that looks like pretty good.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think they laid it really well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, he does that, and that causes the cave in, which then causes his amnesia, essentially, and that kind of transitions to this next half of the movie because it's sort of like, okay, well, the monster's gone, so I guess like things are fine. This guy has amnesia, and the reason he has amnesia is to basically like delay his sort of information that a fucking giant egg hatched along a colony. First of all, surrounded by a colony of meganulons is what we learn is where he was. Just a whole colony of larvae, which had to be terrifying. He plays that terror really well of like, oh fuck, we couldn't shoot these guys. We had to fucking like cave in a whole mine. And how do we fucking deal with a bunch of them? Well, you don't have to, because a big old dinosaur is hatching from an egg and is eating them. So
a problem solved, I guess.
Right. Which, by the way, apparently the bugs that get eaten, like the meganulon that get eaten by the baby Rodan, they just like took crayfish and dressed them in tiny little meganulon costumes so they could actually eat it.
Fucking way. I did kind of wonder, and then just figured like, oh, well, they're probably just like weird little toy type things on a string or something. That's incredible.
Yeah, I love that so much.
That's incredible. That's so funny. I mean, I do love all those scenes when like, it's funny when the amnesia like breaks, I guess. I don't know. Is that how you describe getting your memory back? Like a fever breaks. Does your amnesia break? Like, I love all that stuff in the mind. It is like funny because, you know, anytime you have a character who like has amnesia, you have to wonder like, why did you choose this mechanism? We know, but like all the stuff in the mind looks cool as hell. Like you said, he's acting his ass off, and it's all shot really well. I'm obsessed. I am obsessed with the shot of him looking at the egg, because he's in that shot and you don't really see it right away until he moves. And you're like, oh, like that's the scale of the egg. It looks really good. Everything looks integrated into the shot.
It's so good.
So like everything in those flashback scenes looks incredible, including the weird little crayfish in costumes, you know?
Yeah. So fun, cool. I love the little baby Rodan puppet. It's so cute.
It's so funny.
It's so cute.
Rodan's face is a mystery to me because its face looks different on everything. So like the actual costume, the models, the puppet, and then the baby one. It's so fascinating to me. I feel like there's always some sort of inconsistency between like puppets and costumes, obviously. So like even when we talk about like King Kong or we talk about like Godzilla, there's clearly like a difference. But something about Rodan's face, I still feel like is like a weird blur in my mind as to like, what does your face actually look like?
Yeah.
But the puppet looks amazing. It's really fun. Like the little baby puppet looks amazing.
Yeah.
It's probably the clearest its face ever looks.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I don't know, once Rodan hatches, it grows real fast, and now we're dealing with Rodan. And
all these monsters grow so fast.
They really do. They grow up so fast. But I mean, like, that's what's so interesting is that it's sort of like, okay, well, I know where this is going. Rodan's going to be flying around destroying things, and then jets will chase after him, and then they'll find a way to destroy him. And like, it's not that long, I feel like, before they pull the rug out from under you, and it's just sort of like there's a second Rodan, and they just like throw it out there. It's just sort of like a second Rodan has appeared somehow.
Yeah, well,
there were two all along.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the reason it doesn't necessarily not work is because they've prefaced it with like the scope of destruction. One thing that's wild and really understated in this movie is the scope of destruction. I mean, they show that Rodan is making its way to Beijing, that it's making its way to the Philippines, that it's hitting multiple places in Japan. I mean, the scope of destruction on this movie is larger so far than any movie we've talked about. In the fact that it's hitting multiple countries, more than 2, which was previously, I think, the most we'd seen.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I mean, because it happens so rapidly, right? And it's like, yeah, it is really, you know, and it's so interesting because I was noticing when I was watching the movie, it's sort of like at the beginning of it, for such a long period of time, even after Rodan starts showing up like a little bit, like there's such a minimal amount of focus on destruction. It is very much the
appearances.
It's very much appearances and like the human casualties, like even with the tourists that get whisked away, right? The honeymooners, right? That are taking photos of themselves that get whisked away. It really, and then it's just like, it almost feels like such a different movie when suddenly it's like, oh no, it's also buildings and cities being destroyed in addition to this.
It's kind of brilliant for the buildup of something that isn't built up kind of on its own. Like, because, and I'm so glad you told me this was inspired in part by like UFO stories in Kentucky, because they even say that Rodan's like snatching cows. Like, it's snatching cows, and it's basically abducting people and cows in the way that you think of like a flying saucer, like rolling up on your farm and just like stealing shit. Rodan isn't destroying things to destroy things. Rodan is, and they don't even really directly address this, I don't think, but Rodan is just like showing up places really fast to like eat, and it's destroying things in its wake. I mean, we see like it flies past a bridge and the bridge collapses. It's not trying to break the bridge. It's not like Godzilla's walking through the bridge. It's just like, where's my next meal? Zoom. Oops, I broke a bunch of stuff and probably didn't realize it. So like
zoomies.
It's got the zoomies across several nations. And so it actually kind of makes sense that when you do first start seeing Rodan, it actually, like, visually in the movie is presented in similar ways to the way that like UFOs are presented in photographs. Like, there's this one shot that really stuck out to me where there's this church. The whole shot is almost just a church. And then in the distance is like a small shadow of Rodan, in the same way that you would see like a mock-up of a UFO, which pairs perfectly with the fact that it's just going around snatching people.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, the ingenuity of like the honeymooners having a camera that snatches a photo of Rodan's wing in a way that it's like a cryptid photo. Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool.
Which, by the way, is so funny that they take that photo and then just line it up with like an illustration of dinosaurs in a book. I was like, this is so fucking funny. Whoever thought this up is a comedian, and I love you. It's so goofy.
It's the same.
It's the same. Our depictions are so perfect.
We were right about everything.
We were right. Yeah. It's so cool. And like, even like you said, it focuses so much on people and people's reactions to seeing Rodan that actually most of the time when people see Rodan, we the audience do not see Rodan. So like those two shots I was sharing with you at the very top, with that like cool pan from like top of a mountain to a picnic table, they're looking at Rodan. They're saying it's Rodan. Yeah. You and I do not see Rodan. There's another incredible shot. I love the way that it is staged. It's outside of like a hobby shop with like collectible cards and games and stuff. I took it because I love the way they frame the people in it. It's so perfect. Everyone is so perfectly placed. Where like everybody who's in the quote no one's in the foreground, but anybody who's like closer to the foreground is like framed inside the door of the shop. And if you're not like in the door of the shop, you better get further away or else you're ruining my shot. Like, it's very that. But this is another instance where in the movie they're looking at Rodan, but we don't get to see Rodan. So it's like, so much of what is interesting about Rodan is not seeing Rodan, but it's because of these moments and the behavior of Rodan that make it cool.
Oh, so cool. Oh God. Yeah. And I think it makes sense too, of like transitioning from the horror-y first half into this, is that you kind of get this middle period of like UFO or cryptid-like appearances and not really getting a good look of the monster throughout it, until eventually you do get a good look at the monster and get to see it a lot
And
more.
Actually, the more I think about it, the more it kind of makes sense, because you have this movie that starts off as a horror movie, and like you said, the moment they reveal the monster, everybody knows the monster exists. No one's questioning it anymore. Where do you go from that other than to have another monster that nobody sees, or rather we don't see? You know, like we saw one of the gravest errors in a horror movie is showing your monster too soon. Well, this movie said we're going to show you the monster, and also we're not going to show you the monster. Like, it's kind of brilliant.
That's so funny.
It's really funny.
That is so funny.
But yeah, I mean, so I think honestly all that came from like, I think that makes the two Rodan make sense, because we're not seeing these like single sort of cryptidy appearances. It's sort of like if we discovered Bigfoot and there were actually a whole society. Well, like, sure, we only ever caught one at a time, you know? So it kind of makes sense when someone's just sort of like, oh shit, there's two of them, you know?
Yeah.
Pieces fall into place as opposed to it just being like this random thing. How can people in the Philippines and Japan both be seeing Rodan at the same time? It's like obvious, but also not, because it's a weird sci-fi monster.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, cool fucking shit, dude. Yeah, and then they burn them both up in a volcano.
And still somehow make it beautiful, Derek. I don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is weird. I mean, this we talked a little bit about this, the fact that like their solution is to evacuate a town and blow it up. I mean, I do think they don't really stress that, and I think it's the kind of thing that like it's much more haunting because they don't stress it. I mean, they talk about it, right?
Yeah.
There is somebody in the movie that says we can't do that because there's a whole community of people living there, and someone basically is just like, I mean, do you want to kill Rodan or not? You know, like that's basically what it boils down to.
Right.
There is no winning. There's stopping the monster, but there's no winning. And that's really like it ends in a way that like maybe like a third of the movies we watched so far end where it's just sort of like monster destroyed and we just linger on it. You know what I mean?
And we all feel like shit.
Yeah. Which I love. It sounds weird, but
me
like
too.
the movies that try to make it like a ribbon or a bow at the end, I don't love. And it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not you kill the monster, because Millennium, that monster continues to rampage, and I love that. I love that it's left on that note. Or Millennium? Yeah.
2000 is the one where it's just like...
Right. Yeah.
Godzilla's
That's
here
what
forever.
I'm thinking of with the guy that I hate who screams a lot. He just like continues to rampage, and I love that too, right? Like when there's... I mean, it's after they try to do a bow, but they ultimately end on the rampaging.
Right.
Or you know, when they in return where they just kill Godzilla and then they all just feel like shit for it. Like that feels like appropriate for these kinds of stories where there is no winning, there's just stopping the monster.
And I think that another thing that's smart about the two Rodans is that you end up having this sort of narrative of like, oh my God, boy, but like those two they were either siblings or people interpret them as lovers. Like, and it's like if one dies and the other one's just like, I can't live without my other, you know, like they get to play on the connection because it's not only are you just killing this creature violently in a way that also looks really sad because he's just like slowly burning in fire. Like it's so fucking violent, but it's like, you have a Rodan that first witnessed another Rodan that it clearly was chill with, dying in front of it, seemingly diving in to try to save it, and then
I think
getting killed too.
That's the thing, right? There's two of them, which means this plan could have absolutely failed, and that the moment one went down, the other one could have booked it, right? And you've still got a Rodan problem.
Right.
Like this is a very desperate attempt at stopping them.
Yeah. And it really only works because they
care about each other. Exactly. It hits so much harder, and it only works because they basically took advantage of the fact that these two care about each other, which is so horrifying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, like of course they're gonna feel it. And I will say one thing that the US cut does that's sort of interesting is that like they don't make any bones about that. They like add narration from like Shigeru's character in the dub just to like narrate about how fucking tragic it is that like these, like who are we to kill these two monsters that care about each other, you know? Yeah.
Good. I love when there is a character who vocalizes that.
Yeah.
You know, the original Godzilla has that. Return of Godzilla has that. The American cut of this apparently has that. And I love it. I love that.
The whole thing about its death is so interesting to me because a lot of the way that it... Okay, so first of all, apparently the hot lava was reportedly actual molten steel.
Okay,
which I
was wondering about that.
watching because I was like, this lava looks so good. How do they do this? Oh, because it's literally basically real lava.
I was wondering about it specifically because of the way it was moving. This is going to sound so nerdy, but I was wondering if they were just melting metal because it for whatever reason, like the way that it crawled on the dirt, I was like, it's not taking what did they use? It's like it's moving weird in a way that I feel like I recognize, but it's clearly not like a quote special effect in the sense that it is a real thing that they just did. Okay, that's fascinating. I was wondering.
Wild. Feels irresponsible in my opinion, but sure, it looked good. It looked great.
I think the scale of it was actually pretty small because like it's sort of like the avalanche in Raids where like
where it's just ice cubes.
The scale is like a little in Raids it's like really obvious, but in this one because I was thinking about it so hard, I think the scale's pretty small, so I don't think it was as dangerous as it probably seemed.
Well, it was dangerous enough to like melt the puppets. I mean, they obviously melted the puppets because they like fell into the fire.
Sure.
Even before
I thought you said outfits, and I was like, oh, wait, hold on.
No.
They didn't need to do that.
But I think you notice that like there's like a jerkiness from the second after the first Rodan goes down, there's a weird jerkiness of the second one going down and then like launching back up and then falling right back down. Like, you know, it's very clear that it's a puppet, but like it's still tragic because it's like looks like it's trying to escape. So that was an accident. So like a wire broke because of the heat, like it melted the wires. So basically like the Rodan fell down, and that's why the puppet sort of jerks around kind of unnaturally. And the rumor is that like the puppeteer is sort of like, oh fuck, we're gonna have to do this again. We can't melt these puppets then. Jerks it back up into the air to salvage it, but then
realizes
it falls
like,
back down. So it looks like there's like a last ditch effort for Rodan to try to escape before being like, never mind, I'm fucked, and falling back down.
Works.
And there was, at first it was sort of like, I think we ruined this, but then like Tsubaraya and Honda were sort of like, this actually kind of works. And Honda has a quote in his biography, where he says, at first there was just the regular sound of the monster, but we modified it to make it sound as if it were crying out for something. And without that sound, it just looks like Rodan is flapping around. Sound effects make all the difference. So when you put these sound effects onto it, then it is really like this monster that is in pain went down to try to save its lover or sibling or friend, wasn't able to do it, also caught on fire, freaked out, tried to escape only for the heat to be too much and it falls back down. Like, and the American cut, I think even cuts it a little bit. So like it almost like, I think it's arguable, but it looks a little bit more like it intentionally just commits suicide in it a little bit.
Oh.
So it's, but either way, it's all by accident where it just like shoots out and falls down, you know, which I think is just so funny because I do think if it was just the two puppets just going into the fire and melting, it would be sad. But I think that jerkiness of like, oh my God, this guy is like in pain and trying to escape and crying out, it makes such a big difference.
Totally, for sure. I mean, it certainly is a more painful looking monster death than I think we've seen from anything so far.
Feels like viscerally violent.
Yeah, anytime we've seen Godzilla go down, it's usually the sort of like, they can't see me, but it's like I'm waving my arm in sight like circles and just going down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and you feel bad because you're invested, but like this feels violent. Yeah, like you said.
They feel like they're in pain. I mean, these bitches are on fire for a long time and they're just watching them burn and feeling weird about it.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of strings, this is probably more of a production or costume thing I don't think we talked about. I mean, the actor's on wires at some point, right?
At certain points, yeah.
Anything notable about that? I mean, we've had costumes on fire. We've had people electrocuted.
So there's like a scene when Rodan's flying over the bridge. The pulley that Nakajima was suspended on broke. So he fell from a height of 25 feet.
25 feet?
Yeah, into like water that was only about 1.5 feet deep. So like wasn't really cushioning
Belly
anything.
flop.
But at least between the wings and the water and that little bit of water, like the wings probably slowed down the falling and also took a big brunt of the damage because it's heavy. That like kind of absorbed a lot of the impact. So he was fine. He still fell 25 feet from the air.
Oh my God. I can't believe they had him up 25. I'm trying to think of like 25 feet still seems
really
like
high.
A lot. That seems like really high for whatever they would need to do.
Yeah,
and it's
I mean,
because
I guess
they built this bridge that he had to get over.
I think it was, they built the miniature of the bridge, which I think was still a big miniature because they had to fill it because they had to have 1.5 foot deep water to make it look like a lot of water. Like, I think that's part of what I think Tsubaraya was playing with the scale, right?
Thing.
Like you weren't making tiny things, but I think you are at sort of this disadvantage where like the bigger the scale is, I think the more it makes it clear when water isn't that deep.
Oh, for sure.
So you can't make it too tiny. So you have to make it big enough to be able to fill enough water to make it look like a lot of water when you're shooting it.
But
therefore it has to be pretty big, which means Rodan has to be very high up in the sky.
Ooh, that's so scary. Damn.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And then Mothra comes and they're just sort of like, we don't need a person in that suit, do we?
Yeah.
Oh, it's all puppet.
Yeah. Yeah. The end of this movie is really, really brutal. And like, again, this isn't revolutionary, but just the way that they have that shot linger there. And they have the two of them in the center of the screen, and then just the words "the end" appear directly on top of them. It's like, fuck, dude. Okay, thanks. I'll go cry now.
If Kube, like the music's obviously it's very reminiscent of Godzilla's death, but guess what? The dude knows how to make a sad tune. It is so sad. And like a lot of his music got swapped out in English dub, but they do keep his like end theme when Rodan dies because how can you not?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Whew.
Oof. Anything else about the meat of the movie before we tidy up with some other stuff?
No, I don't think so. I am curious, is there anything else notable about the English cut? Is this one where it's like...
That was going to be my next thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did mention it. I think it is kind of a big deal because this one was very popular. King Brothers Productions did a dub of it in 1957, released in theaters. One of the like most popular or well grossing movies of science fiction movies of that year. So it does really well. It was one of the first Japanese films to release to receive a general release in the West that made a strong showing in the box office. So like, you know, I think this one, in addition to the original Godzilla, helped make a big splash where like it really became marketable to bring over these Japanese movies to America.
Yeah.
Even got like a huge TV advertising campaign when it premiered on television. So like,
wow,
this did have a big staying power.
Wait, and what was the gap between Japan's release and our release?
Just 1 year, I think.
Wow, that's really wild. You know, I've been watching the Planet of the Apes movies, and I keep thinking about those as like old sci-fi movies, despite covering these movies. The release of this movie in America still predates it by like a decade.
Wild. Yeah. I mean, this one, it's like both similar to Raids Again and not like there's some cutting done. Like there's some of the more violent stuff is like cut out of this movie. So it's a little bit shorter.
Which is
they
wild because the violent stuff is really mostly alluded to and like blood on costumes.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess they didn't want to show any blood because they wanted kids to go to this movie.
Get over it. Looks like Kool-Aid.
Yeah. They add some scenes of like stock footage at the beginning of like hydrogen bomb testing with some narration.
Okay.
I think they just wanted to go harder on that theme, I guess, because, you know, the movie keeps it all kind of vague. Like it makes that an idea. So they were just sort of like, it's hydrogen bombs that did this.
Yeah.
But just like with Raids Again, the voice cast is like mostly like Key Luke and George Takei, like a lot of the same people.
Get those gigs.
Yeah. But and they had a lot of narration and stuff. But other than that, it's not a wildly different one. If you watch it, you can watch it on Tubi if you want. It looks abysmal though, like visually.
Oh,
like it's
on
a
Tubi?
really bad cut of it. Yeah. But if you want to watch it, it's there. But yeah.
Look, it looks good on Max. I'm excited to hear that there's an even better version coming out. Because I was still like impressed, but I mean, if you've got Max, go ahead and watch that then instead of the 2D one.
I mean, if those better versions never make it, like there already is a better version out there now, and then an even better version on 4K.
Well, look at that. That just speaks to how good this movie is composed. Because if your composition is good, you know, quality still matters, but like composition's composition. You can't change the composition of a shot unless somebody chopped it up to begin with.
Absolutely. Anything else about Rodan before we get on with some predictions?
No, I don't think so. So.
Good movie. Next movie, Ghidorah, the three-headed monster.
Yeah.
From the Showa era. Starting Hot Ghidorah Summer in earnest. Obviously we were watching Rodan for a reason. I don't think it's a spoiler that Rodan appears in these movies involving Ghidorah.
But when?
Yeah. What role do you think Rodan's going to have in like Godzilla movies when he's with other kaiju?
Well, okay, so that's weird. What's strange is to this point, like if we've been introduced to another monster, it's because that monster meets Godzilla and there are two monsters, right? So like Mothra meets Godzilla, King Kong meets Godzilla, you know? Even in the movies where we're introduced to monsters first in a Godzilla movie, there's still just two of them. I don't think we have not yet seen multiple big monsters all at once. So the fact that Rodan would appear in movies where Ghidorah is involved is intriguing. I know that Ghidorah has its... Actually, does Ghidorah have its own monster? I'm not even sure anymore.
Does Ghidorah have its own monster?
Have its own movie? Or is Ghidorah introduced in Godzilla movies?
He's introduced in this movie, and it probably seems like he's in his own because it's Ghidorah the three-headed monster. I will say there are some movies that Ghidorah is in that Godzilla is not in.
But after the fact.
After the fact. This is his first.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's weird. That's so bizarre. So to introduce a monster into a Godzilla movie, and then there's also a monster from a different Godzilla movie that also would appear. I don't know. Okay, so Rodan flies. Godzilla's a land thing. Ghidorah is a multi-headed dragon that I think maybe also flies. I don't know. I mean, it's got to just like appear. I have no idea how Rodan could possibly fit into any of this.
Yeah.
Because like I'm assuming Ghidorah and Godzilla fight. That's what I want to see. So I'm assuming that's what happens. But
sure.
So then I guess Rodan. I'm going to say that Rodan in some way, shape, or form ends up aligned with Godzilla against Ghidorah. I don't know how it gets there, but I think that's the dynamic. Ghidorah seems too imposing, and I can't really figure out another way that it would make sense for Rodan to even show up if Ghidorah's already there.
Yeah.
So that's the best I think I can do with how Rodan fits.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I know I got to ask, even though we've had plenty of conversations about continuity and stuff, but obviously this movie ends with 2 different Rodans burned alive in a volcano. How is Rodan going to appear again?
You know what I'm mad about? I didn't know there were 2 Rodans to begin with, and now I feel like I'm never going to see 2 Rodans together again. I feel like, I don't know why I feel this way. I could be wrong, but for whatever reason, I still feel like it's going to be 1 Rodan moving forward, which is annoying. So, like, if we don't continue to get 2 Rodan, to me, that should be as inseparable as, like, the priestesses in Mothra. But for whatever reason, I feel like it's going to be 1 Rodan. I feel like I would have known there were more than 1 if they always appeared in pairs. So, I'm assuming if there is continuity, it just turns out that one of them survived, or there's another egg in the mine somewhere.
You know what? Yeah. As Mothra has taught us.
Yeah.
Eggs aplenty.
Yeah. So that I don't have two answers, I'm going to say it's the egg. I think it's going to be the Mothra situation. There's just going to be another egg.
Here for that. All right, cool. I mean, do you think any other kaiju will appear? Any other previous characters from Godzilla movies are going to appear in this next movie?
I mean, but there's already 3, right? So I know.
Cool.
Although if there's already 3, why not 7? There aren't.
Right,
I guess there aren't 7 to this point, but well, no. Oh well, 3 heads. Let's say Mothra shows up too.
Cool. Okay.
Let's say there's 3 heads and each one of them takes on 1.
Yeah. Sounds good. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're gonna find. Yeah. I mean, we'll find out. I mean, you've already spoken to this, I guess, a little bit. Like, do you have any idea what the plot is going to be? I know you've already kind of said, like, Rodan teams up with Godzilla against Ghidorah, but, like, I don't know if you know anything about Ghidorah's origins or anything. So.
I don't know anything about Ghidorah's origins, but I do know that Ghidorah is a multi-headed monster, so it is in some way potentially inspired by Hydra. I know that it is also referred to as King Ghidorah at some point, so I feel like that speaks to some sort of, like, severity or power of Ghidorah. So I'm guessing that Ghidorah is not is the primary malevolent force, and this is probably a movie where Godzilla is the primary like protagonist aligned force, and Ghidorah is simply too strong. So if there's continuity at this point, Mothra would have already been in the equation, I think. So maybe they call in a favor, and then maybe somehow they disturb, the Earth more, and that is how Rodan ends up there, and the 3 of them take on Ghidorah together.
Cool.
That's what I would do.
That's what I would do. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, we'll find out. We're going to do that episode on March 27th. So just a couple weeks from now, you will find out.
Cool.
That'll be exciting. Yeah, I'm excited for you to meet Ghidorah. Before we wrap up, I have a few credits and listener responses that I wanted to get to. So first of all, cover art for this episode was done by a guest artist, John Snyder, Henshin John on Twitter and Instagram.
Hell yeah.
It's really fucking cool. Doug, you haven't even seen it yet, but it's really cool. You're gonna be excited. I'll show it to you afterwards. I haven't put the titles on it yet, but it's a real cool art of Rodan zoomin' and Rodan doobie zoomin'.
Rodan doobie zoomin'.
Yeah, so definitely follow John for all of his really, really, really cool ass art, and check out his YouTube videos as well. I'll link to all of those in the show notes.
Hell yeah.
For some listener responses, I wanted to bring this up because Spotify has this function apparently where you can, like, respond to podcast episodes, which is really cool, except, like, if you are the owner of that podcast, or if you just want to reply at all, you can't. There's no way to like a thing or reply.
Or anything, is there?
No, you have to just go into, like, our podcasting, like, platform thing where we upload the episodes and just look. I don't think. Yeah, maybe. You know what? There might be a way to set up
there's a way
email.
to turn it on.
There's probably a way to set up email notifications. But yeah, I just have to check periodically. So I wanted to make sure I brought that up, because if you don't know that and you're like, I'm saying nice things, why isn't anyone responding? It's because I literally can't. I'm guessing it's built so podcasters can respond on air, which I get that, but I'm like, at least let me heart stuff or, like, something to acknowledge
that this happened.
Yeah, especially when you're, like, monthly, because it's like, I hate waiting so long to respond to people. But anyway, A couple messages. Zachzilla wrote, new listener to the pod. I've been looking for some fellow queer perspectives on these amazing films that I love so much. Can't wait to hear more. So thank you for that, Zachzilla.
Yeah. Good reminder. Rodan, gay couple, clearly.
Oh, absolutely. Look, there are some places where it's like, there's one of the Rodans is female.
No.
And I'm like, there's literally
they could both be. I don't care. They're gay either way.
There is no evidence of that anywhere. That is not true. That is not the truth, Ellen. These are gay motherfucking, like, only, you know what? Only a true queer person would dive into the flames to rescue their
lover.
The straights would never. And Kaiju fan 21 has actually commented on every single episode and always has said incredibly nice things about it. It's always very high compliments. I've never had a podcast called a masterpiece before, so thank you so much for that. That really means a lot. He did ask a question on our most recent episode, asking, is it possible to make a list of all the movies that you're going to cover? So
that we're going to cover.
Right.
Ooh, interesting.
Because obviously I think because obviously throwing in these if you say all the Godzilla movies, like, that's obvious, but throwing in the extra movies does make it a little harder. So I have a rough outline for what we're doing over the next couple of years, to the end, but I've tried to keep that very malleable. Like I said, wasn't originally part of the plan to do movies like Rodan. And I'm glad that we are, and that obviously shifted the schedule and how we do things. And sometimes we'll have episodes twice a month. Sometimes it's once a month. Also just depends on our availability and scheduling and stuff. So with that said, I think it's safer to not over promise and under deliver. I think the schedule, what we announce on the end of episodes, like we announced Hakador Summer in the last one, and I do make graphics that we put on social media. If you, I'm going to start adding them as well to our Glitterjaw newsletter that I think will have launched by the time this episode comes out. You can go to glitterjaw.com and put your email in, and we'll send out at least like monthly newsletters, and that'll include schedules for like Skrionk and stuff coming up as we release those schedules. So like you can see what we're covering like over the next few months. I'll always make sure that that's announced. But as for like in total, it's kind of hard to say because I want to be able to allow it to change depending on new things that we discover and things that come up.
And what I will say is that means you'll be getting the same experience I do. I don't know more than you do as far as like what movies we're covering or when.
Doug hasn't seen my spreadsheet that has all of that has the tentative schedule that I am constantly adjusting and swapping and changing. Yeah. The thing that we're doing in December, I'm like not even 100% sure on. That's going to be finalized when I have to announce the schedule for it.
Yeah.
So,
you're
that's
getting
kind
the
of
second seat, experience with me.
Yeah. Yeah. But I can say that like, as far as the non-Godzilla movies, I think the other one that we have coming up is going to be Frankenstein versus Baragon, or Baragon versus Frankenstein. I don't remember which order it is. That is on the schedule. I don't have it in front of me, but with that is happening, this summer. So like that is one of the non-Godzilla movies that are coming up, and this is actually a good segue into the other comments that I've gotten. Both Will at DC20 Will Save on Twitter, who's a great supporter of all the stuff that we do, as well as Magnus Hendrickson on Instagram, both asked about the Rebirth of Mothra trilogy from the 90s. If we're ever going to do that, because that also came up with Hamish's episode.
Yeah.
And that one I don't currently have on the schedule for it, but I do think that I think that Mothra being so integral to Godzilla universe makes sense that we could do it, that we would think it's justifiable to do it at some point.
I think how we do it, when we do it, I think you and I should probably talk, because I want to watch them. I think it's just a question of whether they invade the schedule that you're already working on or not. So
exactly.
I plan to. So I think it would not be weird if in some way we talked about them, but like you said, not promising, just in case we don't do it the way that, we do everything else.
We'll talk about it. Yeah. At the very least, I have pretty much the schedule for the rest of the year built out, so we're not going to plug them in this year, but we've got space to figure it out in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, the priority is all the Godzilla movies. Everything else is sort of like secondary if it can make sense. I would love to do the 90s Gamera trilogy one day, because I would love Doug to watch those, but
those
not
are like not connected
movies.
At all. Right?
Not connected at all. So like, maybe
Yeah.
I just tell Doug to do Gamera, to watch Gamera, and maybe do like a Patreon bonus or something. I don't know.
Right.
So yeah, but all of those, so to answer all of your questions, I don't know. It's all up in the air. We'll figure it out. But thanks for the suggestions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some podcasting, a lot of times playing it, doing it.
Well,
I was going to say playing it by the seat of your pants. That's not the phrase. Playing it by ear and
flying by the seat of your
flying
pants.
by the seat of your pants. Yeah.
Well,
both of those
look,
things.
the fact that we're not going chronologically gives us a little bit of freedom. So, let us play with our freedom a little bit here.
I think it's really cool that people are so excited for us to cover things.
Totally.
I love how enthusiastic, like, because it's multiple people are just like, you gonna do this, and I'm like, I don't know, but I love that you're asking me, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
And it has and it is actually, and it is very helpful to get recommendations of, especially because you don't know what I have or haven't
You
seen.
don't know what
so
I
it might be
got.
something. Yeah, but also, you know what, like, there might be things where it's like, I don't know if you realize this, but this would work really well in conjunction with this movie or something
sure.
like that. Like, that kind of stuff has been really helpful. So
Yeah.
I appreciate everyone's feedback. I get so much feedback for this show that it's like overwhelming sometimes in a good way. So yeah, thanks so much for listening, everyone. I'm glad that you're enjoying it, and I love hearing from you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Keep it coming.
Yes. Well, if you would like to find other queer creators who talk about media like us, check out the Glitterjaw Queer Podcast Collective at glitterjaw.com. We've got, as of this recording, we're going to have a brand new Glitterjaw website that's up and running, that has individual show pages, including ones for Skrionk. If you want to see the cover art that we have for these podcast episodes in full without the Skrionk titles on them, like see what the artists originally came up with, there's this little slideshow of that on our Skrionk page on the new glitterjaw.com website.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That was a surprise to me.
Oh, well, I guess you haven't seen the links that I sent you of Glitterjaw test website.
What? I literally have.
Clearly didn't look at the Skrionk page that's there.
That's our show. That's the one I know the most about.
If you want to follow Glitterjaw on social media, you can follow it on Twitter, Facebook, and Blue Sky at Glitterjaw, and on Instagram at GlitterjawPods. But Doug, if we want to find you individually, where can they do that?
You can find me all over the place at Ikkybooley, ICKYBOOLEY. You can listen to me weekly on a podcast that Derek and I do together called Walloping Web Snappers, which is a show where we deep dive into every Spider-Man cartoon ever made. And you can also listen to me on another Glitterjaw show called Novel Gaming, where Katie and I catch up on all of the books, video games, and sometimes other media we have been consuming lately. What about you, Derek?
Sure. You can find me most places at Derek B. Gale. You can also find my other podcast, Gimmicks, where I look at the high concept, experimental, structure breaking, gimmicky episodes of TV with my co-host David, and Lee Carvalho's Potting Challenge, which is a podcast I do with my co-host Tommy, where we are looking at all of the Simpsons tie-in video games chronologically, as well as deep dives into video game history and Simpsons history. Join our Patreon, patreon.com/wallopingwebsnappers. That is, of course, the name of our Spider-Man cartoon podcast, but you can still support us because that supports everything that we do together. And we always have ideas for potential Godzilla bonus episodes that we might do. So join us there and you might see some Godzilla bonuses in the future. Check out our Discord as well. That is also our Walloping Web Snappers Discord, but we do have a channel for Skrionk there. You can email us at skrionkpodcast@gmail.com. Rate, review, and subscribe on all your podcast platforms. Of course, that always helps. And on June 27th, we start Hot Ghidorah Summer for real when The King debuts, the 1964 film Ghidorah, the Three-Headed Monster.
Woo! Can't wait to meet him.
See ya.
Bye.